It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Other credit cards often charge annual fees for access to perks you might not even use, or that can come with restrictions. Apple Card gives you valuable benefits without annual fees. In fact, there's not a single fee at all. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start using it right away. Subject to credit approval. Variable APRs range from 13.99% to 24.99% based on credit worthiness. Rates as of October 1st, 2022.
The following podcast includes explicit language, but we assume that's what you came for.
Hi, I'm Josh Levin, Slate's national editor, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of October 24th, 2022. On this week's show, Ben Lindbergh of The Ringer and the Effectively Wild podcast. He will be here to talk about the World Series matchup between the Astros and the Phillies, and not the Yankees. We'll also discuss the declines of Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers, and whether they're temporary or less so. And we'll assess whether Adam Silver's NBA promotion and relegation talk is for real or less so. And if it is real, the Lakers are definitely getting relegated. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm the author of The Queen, the host of the podcast 1 Year. Also in D.C., Stefan Fatsis. He's the author of the books Wild and Outside, Word Freak, and A Few Seconds of Panic. Hello, Stefan.
Hi, Josh. I went to a college football game this weekend.
Say more.
Brown against Cornell, Joel. Oh, my God, the end of this game. Brown had the ball on the 1 with a chance to win with like 20 seconds to go.
Ooh.
First down, loss of 4, penalty. Second down, loss of whatever. Third down, drops back from the 20.
This is a very desultory play-by-play.
Strip sack, fumble, game over.
Wait, so
it was homecoming for Brown. All those poor Brunonians. Josh, I know, was
Josh, yeah, like
at the end of this.
What have you spent all this time talking about LSU? Why haven't you brought up Brown?
I did go to one Brown football game. That was, Joel, like you talk about SMU having a great FCS atmosphere.
Delightful for a few thousand fans and friends. Just
nice little stadium, nice little atmosphere there, though.
Some of us grew up with 100,000. It's hard to make the steep climb down.
Fair enough. It never rains in Tiger Stadium.
There was, I think, a parent sitting a few rows in front of us, like dropping F-bombs over Brown's poor performance at the end of the game. It was ugly. Not befitting.
High expectations.
Homecoming.
It means more in the Ivy League. So,
with us from California, host of Slow Burn Season 3 and 6, and remains proud of Sonny Dykes University. Joel Anderson, I liked how there was a little bit of sorrow with your having to troll Kansas State. You're like, these guys, they played really hard, but I just have to say, L State, with a little with a tear going down your face.
Those boys fight hard, man. And for people that aren't old enough, I still think of Kansas State as the program that, like the little program that could, a lot of people don't remember that was probably the worst FBS program in the country as recently as like a generation ago. And so, I kind of always have a little soft spot for them when they put up a good fight. But, they were up against the number 8, now number 7 team in the country, on their home field for homecoming blackout. I mean, you just kind of, that's a tough environment for any program to go into, let alone K-State.
So for kids, growing up now, like how Nebraska is really terrible. Like that's how Kansas State used to be. In our Slate Plus segment, we are going to talk about roughing the passer penalties in the NFL and whether they should just be playing flag football out there. What's going on, refs? What are you protecting these quarterbacks for? It's ridiculous.
What did Troy Aikman say they should be wearing?
I'm not going to go there.
You're not going to go there? Okay.
You can listen to Troy on your own time. Not on this podcast. But if you want to listen to that, and it's an interesting conversation about what they should do about roughing the passer, you need to be a Slate Plus member. And we have a special announcement that for a limited time, you can get 6 months of Slate Plus for just $29. It's a good
That's really good. That's a good deal.
It is a very good deal. Yeah. It's 50% off. And as a member, you'll get no ads on any Slate podcasts. You get unlimited reading on the Slate site. You'll get member-exclusive segments of Hang Up and Listen and other shows, and member-exclusive episodes, 1 year, slow burn, etc. Sign up for Slate Plus at slate.com/hangupplus. You can access all of Slate's content and support our work. It's just $29 for 6 months, and it's through October 28th, so you only have this week to get that deal. So sign up now, slate.com/hangupplus. Personal affront if you don't sign up, according to Joel. I wouldn't ever say that.
If the Philadelphia Phillies can beat the Houston Astros, they will, with a regular season record of 87-75, be the third worst World Series champion, behind only the 2006 St. Louis Cardinals, 83 wins, and the 1987 Minnesota Twins, 85 wins. While this is good trivia, it doesn't mean much, because while baseball's playoffs, as we've discussed, do a fine job of anointing a champion, they do a terrible one of determining which is the best team. So what would it take to determine the best team? In a piece in The Ringer last week, our friend Ben Lindbergh noted that for Major League Baseball to achieve the playoff success rate of the NBA based on regular season records, it would need to stage a best-of-75 finals. Ben Lindbergh is here now. He's a senior editor at The Ringer, the co-host of the podcast Effectively Wild, and the co-author of The MVP Machine and The Only Rule Is It Has to Work. Hi, Ben.
Hey, guys.
All right, so I would be interested in a best-of-75 final only if the teams had to play nonstop, like a dance marathon. Ben, we're having this conversation about playoff equity because a bunch of 100-win teams, Dodgers, Mets, Braves, were dumped out in the early rounds. But it feels kind of like, after all these years, everybody should understand that baseball is a long season and short series are random. But here we are again.
Yeah, it's definitely not a new conversation or a new complaint by fans of teams that were really good during the regular season and then exited quickly. I guess it kind of came to the fore just because you had a confluence of a few very good teams getting knocked out in quick succession, and you also have a new playoff format and expanded playoff field. Not that that was really directly responsible for the upsets we saw. It's more just a function of baseball. So I like your they shoot baseball players, don't they idea and proposal for the playoffs, but I'm not sure that that would work with appetites from TV audiences, let alone the weather, which has already become uncooperative.
Do you think the MLB cares, though, about those 100-win teams losing ahead of the World Series? Because I think about in like college football or whatever, or actually the March Madness is probably the better thing. Sometimes like Duke loses and they're counting on Duke to bring in viewers. So like it probably is better for Major League Baseball if those really good teams make it to the World Series. But like, do you get the sense that that even really matters to them?
I said in my article that there's sort of an upset sweet spot where obviously you don't want the favorites always to win and you don't want the underdogs always to win because then it would seem sort of meaningless or just overly predictable and boring. So you want some number of upsets because that's exciting. I guess in this specific case, maybe MLB would have wanted, let's say, the Mets and the Dodgers to continue if we assume that they just want the big market, big audience teams to advance. But beyond that, beyond the specific teams, I think there's obviously a benefit to having some upsets. And I think you just sort of have to understand what you're watching and what you're getting into and just maintain a healthy perspective, which sports fans are great at, historically speaking. So as long as you just understand that, yeah, the regular season tells you more maybe about the quality of the teams and the playoffs are just a tournament. It's just sort of a separate entity where anything can happen. And we all sort of pretend that it's just as meaningful, if not more meaningful. I think you can enjoy it perhaps without assuming that it means that if you win, you were necessarily the better team. You just were the better team in that series, presumably. So it's tough to maintain that perspective, though, because that World Series or bust mindset is really drilled into fans. And I think a lot of teams think that if their team made it, then they're the team of destiny and they were the better team all along, which is not necessarily true, but it's just a kind of collective fiction that we all buy into and enjoy for a month or so. And it really has been enjoyable.
How do you square the fact that it's impossible to build a team to win in the playoffs with the fact that the Houston Astros always win in the playoffs? And I felt like we went way too long in this segment and talking about this in a kind of cool and dispassionate, we're above it all sort of way. The playoffs, blah, 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 who cares? It's just da-da-da-da-da. But we need to feed Joel's hunger and passion to troll the world about the Astros' continued success. And so I will ask seriously.
Hey, New York's been good to me, man, in my life. I appreciate New York and its sports team, starting with the 94 Knicks. Appreciate y'all.
I will ask seriously. Is there something we can say about the Astros' sustained success? It's like a record, too. They made the ALCS like 6 times in a row. Nobody had ever done that before. There must, Ben Lindbergh, be something that they're doing right here.
Well, first of all, I think it's fine for Joel to be the human embodiment of the broom that the Astros have been tweeting out every time they sweep someone. That's fine. They deserve it. They've earned it. As far as we know, they're not cheating anymore. This is all on the level. They're just a really good team. And
Joel spent way too much time in the gym to be taught, described as a broomstick. I'm offended.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe more your build, Josh. Sorry.
Oh, man.
No, I think that all you can do is get there, and they have gotten there very consistently, and they've been one of the better teams, if not the best team in the playoff field year after year. So yeah, they have made it to 6 straight ALCSs. They've only won 1 championship thus far, and that's the one that is tainted by the sign stealing.
Wow.
Whoa.
Only one championship.
Whoa.
Wow.
Hey, whoa.
Only one championship. Wow. And of course, we know that the Yankees won. All those championships were clean. But go ahead.
They might be about to add a second, but it is true that they've only won 1, and that one is the one that just so happened to be the year when they were sign stealing. Not saying that there is a causal connection there. It could be a coincidence, but even they are not.
Everything that happens in the playoffs is a coincidence. We've established that.
Yes, exactly. Right. Unless you believe in teams of destinies or that winning a short series means that you were entitled to win all along. I think they're just really good, though. I mean, I think there have been a lot of studies that showed that the sign stealing probably didn't have that big an impact overall.
We go.
There's no way to say that they didn't win a specific series because of it. We can't rule it out. But I think just the fact that they have continued to win at this level probably tells you that they were good even without the sign stealing, which makes it even more senseless that they were doing it in the first place, because they were just a really good baseball team that didn't necessarily need to cheat to be good. But this version of the Astros this year is, if not the best, it's close to the best they've been. You could make a case for the 2019 team too. So they have sort of steamrolled the Yankees a lot lately. And I think for the most part, they've just been the better team, which again is not necessarily why they won. Definitely some luck has been on the Astros side, as Aaron Boone said. Maybe he shouldn't have said that, but he did say it, and perhaps there's some truth to it. You have to have some luck on your side to sweep your way through the playoffs, but you also have to be good, and the Astros are very good too.
Yeah, there's no doubt the Astros pitched better, they hit better, they played better. The Yankees made errors. And the Yankees also had injuries, and the Yankees were cycling through shortstops and having Giancarlo Stanton play left field for the first time in like 3 years in Yankee Stadium. I mean, it was not the stable team that the Astros rolled out. And that's to take nothing away from the Astros. They kicked their asses. Can I just back up for 1 second, Ben? Because I've heard a lot of, and Joel has his finger up to talk about the Astros, and let's do that. I have one quick question, which is that for all of the tinkering with the playoff format, the one thing that I haven't heard is that if we really care about the teams with who win more games during the regular season having an advantage, we saw this year they got all home games in the first round, this new first round of the playoffs. Has anyone floated the idea of making the team with the worst record have to win more games in a series? Like,
I have not heard it seriously considered here. That's what they do in the KBO in Korea.
Right.
They do that. They start off the worst team with a deficit, at least in some rounds, and they have sort of a ladder where you have to work your way up, and the lowest seeded team plays the next lowest seeded, and then eventually they get to the higher seeds. And so it is a more predictable outcome. The better team wins more often. So I think if you wanted to actually have the playoff results reflect the regular season results more reliably without playing a best of 75 series and having only Stefan Fatsis tuning in by the end, I think that wouldn't be a bad way to do it. But it would be an adjustment, right?
There are way more fun ways you could advantage the team with the best record. You could give them like ladders in the outfield. You could move the fences. Just give them a completely easy path and not make them earn it, Stefan.
Yeah, sure. Just, take a fielder away from the worst team, whatever it takes, some weird, wacky version of baseball. Yeah. But you could also just accept that it's weird and wacky and weird stuff happens. So that's what we've been living with to this point.
Can I ask a question that's sort of weird and off the wall here? Because this occurred to me as a longtime Astros fan. They were in the National League for 50 years until 2012. And now all of a sudden they've moved over to the American League and have become dominant. And I'm asking you, Ben, and even you, Josh, and stuff. And like, is it weird for you all to think of the Astros as an American League team? Because when I grew up, like the Cubs, the Reds, like those were their rivals. And like those were the games that you counted on to fill up the home stadium, and now it's just like, they're in the American League playing the fucking Mariners and the Angels, and that's supposed to mean something. But like, have you all gotten adjusted to that, the idea that the Astros are an American League team now?
It took me a little while to get used to the new alignment, yeah. But at this point, basically, the leagues are like conferences. I mean, there's just no difference between them. We have a universal DH now. There isn't any real league rivalry. There aren't really any differences in the rule sets or anything. And so a lot of that historical AL-NL rivalry, like, the World Series and the All-Star Game really mean something for bragging rights between leagues. Oh, that's really fallen by the wayside. So for me, I don't miss it that much. I don't care all that much about there being a difference between the leagues. I'm fine with it kind of being like most other major sports and leagues where it's just sort of a geographic alignment, or it's just happenstance more so than there's a real difference here. But that's the way that we've trended. So I don't even think of the Astros as a former NL team so much anymore. It's been a while.
I don't either. And yet, you said that we've sanded down those differences, Ben, but these are not geographically based. This is not Eastern Conference, Western Conference.
No.
There is still this fiction that these leagues exist. And at some point in the future, I imagine that those are going to be adjusted.
Maybe so, especially if expansion happens. Yeah.
Let's talk about Bryce Harper. And given that these games do happen, even if the outcomes are...
We're gonna move on from the Astros without talking about Ted Cruz behind home plate.
I think so.
Only if I want to talk about Rudy Giuliani or, Donald Trump in his Yankees jacket throwing out first pitches or whatever. If you want to, that's fine. But go ahead.
The Yankees may have lost, but the fans did a great job of serenading Cruz when he left in the sixth inning.
Well, it's a small victory, I guess.
So given that these games happen, we're going to create playoff heroes. That's never going to be something that doesn't happen. And the Bryce Harper kind of, after breaking his thumb and struggling when he came back, seeing him hit that home run to send them to the World Series, having a great playoffs so far, it's been kind of strangely surprising to me, Ben, given all of the hype around him. He's had a kind of rocky career, like these 2 MVP seasons, but also some years where he's often been compared to Mike Trout. Definitely was not as consistently great as Mike Trout has been, not even close to it. And then he signs this enormous contract in a city that eats its sports heroes alive. And seeing that, like, this is maybe the one enormous contract to a hitter that seems like it could be, like, actually not an atrocious, like, team-killing deal. Like, I find it all kind of strange and surprising, even though like Bryce Harper is good at baseball, is maybe like not a confounding thing at all.
Yeah, he has had a really fascinating career. I think the expectations were set just so high, just unmeetably high by being a teenage phenom. But really, he has met or surpassed any reasonable expectations, I think you could say at this point. I mean, he's clearly on a Hall of Fame path. He has won a couple MVP awards. He would have been on an MVP path this year, too, before he got hurt and missed time and came back kind of compromised. Now he's added playoff hero to his resume, which was one thing that was lacking, largely due to a lack of opportunity, more so than him not playing well in the postseason. And he's been one of the quote-unquote faces of the game, right? He is just a very vocal, very visible, very charismatic player. Even in this series, like so many highlights, so many gifs, like he's very expressive, very demonstrative. He had that face he made after Kyle Schwarber hit almost a 500-foot homer that just instantly joined the baseball gif pantheon. So he's a big star. And early in his career, you'd get various surveys of players where they would say, oh, Bryce Harper is the most overrated player. But really, you can't call him overrated anymore. He's just really good. He's been one of the best players in baseball for a while now. And yeah, it's great. Like you sign a superstar to a big contract, and he really ingratiated himself with Phillies fans right away, almost pandered to them, I guess, and just sort of, got some cheap heat just by talking up Philadelphia as a place and all the things that Philly fans want to hear out of Philly players. But he has backed that up by winning an MVP award and now being a postseason hero. And you can't really count on the bat being in the hands of your high-priced superstar at that big moment. It just so happened this time, if the batting order had lined up differently, he would not have had the bat in his hands at that point. But he did. And it's always special when things lined up like that, so that the big star, the guy you want at the plate, actually gets to come to the plate at that moment and have a great at bat and hit a home run. And it was just a huge moment and really kind of makes his legacy if it wasn't made already. But, he's had the opportunity to do that, right? He had to be put in that place. Whereas Mike Trout, as you said, they came up around the same time and they've often been compared. And yeah, Trout has been a better player, but he is not getting in that opportunity to hit that big home run because the Angels are bad every year. So that's what people lament when they lament the Angels being bad. It's that we don't get to see Mike Trout have that kind of moment because he's just not put in that position.
And it's the narrative is playing itself out in the way that Harper and his father sort of orchestrated when he left Washington for Philadelphia. I mean, the one thing they played up was that he was committed to the city, no opt-outs in his contract, which was very rare for a Scott Boras client. His father is still talking about why Bryce connects so well with Philadelphia. I think it's because I was an iron worker. I'm blue collar. He was raised in that kind of a family. Your kid has a $330 million contract, but these narratives do persist. And this is the rare case where performance meets story. And if they win the World Series, they're going to need the Philly cops to go on like triple special overtime.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, he hadn't been on a team that had won a postseason series until this year. And now they're winning largely on the strength of his performance. I mean, it's just one player on a team, but he's having, to this point, one of the best postseasons ever. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Joel, what do you think of the city of Philadelphia? Maybe we can end there.
I think Philadelphia is a lovely town. I've actually, it's funny, and this isn't interesting probably, but I don't think I've ever met anybody from Philadelphia that I don't like. So, which is
that's not a winning attitude, Joel. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any beef with them, but they don't want this either. But I guess my question is, so the Yankees losing is representative of some larger organizational problem, apparently. Like, people are wanting the Yankees to do something. But the Dodgers also, they've gotten a World Series through this and they've done really well. But they've come up short a couple of times recently too, except for the pandemic shortened season or whatever. So should those teams do anything given how successful they were in the regular season? Or is it like a lot of that just like fans at the end of the year disappointed that, it didn't end the way that it looked like it might end?
I think it's a lot of the latter and a little bit of the former, too. The Dodgers have just had one of the greatest regular season runs of all time. So it's hard to say that they should change much, even though they have had a lot of playoff exits and some of them with some kind of controversial managerial decisions. The Yankees, they started off so well this year, like on a historic pace, that I think they really raised expectations to perhaps an unreasonable level. And then they really were not very good for a while, and they just kind of backed into the playoffs. They almost blew a very large lead.
15 and a half games.
Yeah, and then they got to this point and, they were shorthanded. They lost a lot of players. Some of the deficiencies of that roster were exposed, but it remains the case. They won 99 games this year. They haven't had a losing season since the early 90s. Most fan bases would be happy to have it the way that the Yankees have it, but I think it's partly the fact that they have not gone out and, other than Garrett Cole in recent years, really signed the biggest ticket free agents. They've kind of tried to do what teams with lower payrolls might do and mix and match and find undervalued guys. And people expect the Yankees to go out if they have a vacancy at shortstop, sign Carlos Correa. If they have a hole at first base, sign Freddie Freeman. And they haven't really done that. They've kind of taken the budget route and tried to have a better holistic roster without really breaking the bank for anyone. It just seems like that is partly an ownership issue, that the new, younger Steinbrenner is not as willing to just blow everyone away payroll-wise as his father was. It seems like Steve Cohen of the Mets is the biggest spender in New York now. So I think Yankees fans are frustrated about that. They're frustrated about just the way the things ended and some of the messaging and Aaron Boone maybe not being as fired up as they want him to be. So some of it is sort of a silly overreaction, and some of it I think is a reasonable response to the Yankees not really acting the way the Yankees used to, in good ways, but also in some bad ways too.
Okay. One word answer. Will they break the bank for Aaron Judge?
Yes.
Okay, that's an answer. That's all we needed to hear, Ben. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ben Lindbergh is the senior editor at The Ringer, the co-host of Effectively Wild, the podcast, and co-author of The MVP Machine. And the only rule is it has to work. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys.
Up next, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. Swan songs?
Every deep playoff run starts with building an amazing team. Doing the same for your business doesn't take a room full of scouts. You just need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hey, waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows more than 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applications from resumes in our database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/hangup to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/hangup, Indeed.com/hangup. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Indeed.com/hangup. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. On Sunday, quarterback Russell Wilson sat out of the Denver Broncos' loss against the New York Jets, reportedly due to a torn hamstring. This came just days after social media went wild with reports that his signature sandwich, the Danger Witch, had been taken off the menu at Subway due to his extremely bad acting and/or his extremely bad play. While Subway insists that the Danger Witch sub was simply cycled out in favor of, quote, some new craveable options, my perusal of Subway's online menu calls that claim into serious question. Joel, as someone known for his football acumen and extremely questionable food takes, what do you think is less palatable? Wilson's nearly league worst quarterbacking statistics, or pepperoni, salami, Black Forest ham, bacon, provolone, lettuce, green peppers, tomatoes, banana peppers, yellow mustard, and mayo on Italian herbs and cheese bread. And before you answer, let me remind you that if you want to make that a meal, it will cost an extra $2.99.
You opened the door for this aside. So I guess I haven't been to Subway in a long time because, I mean, there was a time when Subway did a great job of keeping me fed when I didn't have the money for many other options. And do they just have a, quote, sandwich board with signature sandwiches on it? Because I didn't even know. I saw the list of signature sandwiches, and I was like, oh, is that like on a different board in Subway? I haven't been in one in a long time.
So they have these new Vault sandwiches, and there was the claim from like Subway PR is that, oh, we need to make room in the vault for these other sandwiches. Like somehow it's just like they have the ingredients in the bucket. It's not like they need to like truck in the ingredients from like some, island or mountain or somewhere.
Wait, you're telling me that Derek Jeter doesn't personally make the grand salami for me?
There's the Vault Witch by Simone Biles. It's still in the vault. The Front Court Feast by Charles Barkley. What was your go-to Subway order, Joel?
Well, I was mostly just a turkey guy. Right, it's got turkey and no cheese on it. And I eat a half sandwich every meal. So for lunch and dinner, and I was doing this up to like my late 20s. So
it's a good
I don't
deal.
think they had signature sandwiches.
If the turkey sandwich was named for Manu Ginobili, would you have ordered it?
I mean, sort of an underwhelming option, just like the sandwich. So you just do what you can in a pinch. So that's kind of like Manu Ginobili. But I would never insult that sandwich because my favorite sandwich, shout out Driftwood Deli on El Camino, has turkey, pastrami, bacon, melted provolone, avocado, mayo, lettuce, tomatoes, red onions, chipotle pesto spread on a toasted Dutch crunch roll.
There's just like a sandwich dartboard, right? And you put up 100 ingredients and someone each morning throws a dart and whatever 10 ingredients it nails or what you put in that day.
It's called the customer's favorite. And I was not really, I've loved sandwiches. I was not a huge sandwich guy until I started eating the sandwich. So anyway, aside, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
That one didn't sound that different from the Danger Witch. It's sort of like how Jimmy Garoppolo, who does have his own signature sandwich. Let me scroll down here.
It
is the Benissimo.
Oh, come on, man. That's
the Benissimo.
but no, hear me
out.
We're getting into Nick Mullins territory now. I mean,
hear me out. Like Jimmy Garoppolo, really handsome guy, number one. Number two, he makes all these like amazing plays and then just makes horrible plays. And so like the line between quarterbacking excellence and like a guy who is maybe should be a backup, it's not that Garoppolo can't make the throws or can't. On his best plays, he looks like the best player. It's just the lack of consistency and like maybe every ingredient. Maybe there's some Black Forest ham that's on there that shouldn't be on there. That's what I'm saying.
That sounds about right. I mean, nobody said that the sandwich was the best sandwich they had to offer, right? So
Russell Wilson.
So Russell Wilson, to your point. So I'm thinking of everything that's been written and said about Russell Wilson through this early part of the season, and what I keep coming back to is that he's 33 years old. And do you know who else is 33 years old? Cam Newton. And I say that because this is Russ's 10th season in the NFL. In John Elway's 10th season, the Broncos drafted Tommy Maddox in the first round. Dan Marino ruptured his Achilles in his 11th season when he was 32 years old. Joe Montana was in his early 30s when the 49ers brought in Steve Young. So I just wonder if perhaps we've gotten too used to the exceptions to the rule, like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and not thought about what the actual life of an NFL player is. Like, it could be that we are witnessing the aging process in Russell Wilson in the way that it used to be with NFL quarterbacks, that you didn't, have a prime that lasted until you were 36 or 37 years old. And it just seems like in that way, the Broncos I hate to say it this way, maybe brought, false bill of goods here, man. This is not the Russell Wilson that anybody thought they were going to get, but maybe we need to start thinking that, hey, everybody can't play till 45 like Tom Brady.
Russell Wilson is, you said 32 or 33?
He's 33.
33. So he's a year older than Geno Smith, who replaced him in Seattle. And their numbers don't exactly line up right now. Geno Smith is the far superior quarterback. Maybe waiting a decade to get good is the secret to success in the NFL. And that partly might be true, actually. Getting hit as much as Russell Wilson got hit in Seattle is going to cause a toll. It is just a simple fact of the human body that the number of hits that these guys sustain, and he sustained, I think, more than like anybody in like the history of the NFL through his first like 7 seasons or something, that is going to affect his mobility. It's going to affect his strength. It's going to affect everything about his ability to play. I mean, there are quarterbacks that leave the league. Jake Plummer, who I hung out with in Denver, quit at 32 because he said, I'm done. I don't want to get hit anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's not worth it. Whether that was just Jake being Jake or whether it was the recognition that I've had enough miles and I've gotten hit enough times and I'm not going to be as good at 33, 34, 35. I don't know. But he made a conscious decision to quit. Russell Wilson got paid $245 million over 5 years from the Broncos to stay.
Okay. I'm curious if you guys think that's like, if Occam's razor here is that he is a really good quarterback still. I mean, he has a long run of sustained success in the NFL as one of, by any metric, by scouts, by anything, is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. And as recently as early 2020, he was like the obvious league MVP after getting off to a really fast start, and then tapered off from there. So new organization with a coach who we've discussed on this show seems completely out of his element. Doug Farrar had a piece on this, a coach who doesn't seem to like quarterbacks who play the way that Russell Wilson plays. Wilson is a guy who likes to create outside the pocket, and Nathaniel Hackett prefers a drop back pocket, traditional pocket passing type dude. So we do have evidence in the past, and Joel, that list was really great as a reminder of how fall-offs can be steep and sudden. And so we do have examples of that, but we also have examples of, people saying Tom Brady was cooked like 10 times in the last decade.
But should we throw Tom Brady out as an example, Josh? I mean, he is the outlier of all outliers.
Sure, but Drew Brees is a short quarterback who managed to play until he was 40 and definitely had some dips in performance with injury, and Russell Wilson has had not just a hamstring, he had like some shoulder issue here. So it would just wouldn't surprise me if this is all a big overreaction. And Joel, maybe we can transition here to the personality stuff, because there are people who, rooting for Russell Wilson to fail. I think there are some people who are Seahawks fans who are rooting for him to fail, but there is the kind of cringe, awkwardness aspect of Russell Wilson where it's kind of funny when he doesn't do well, or the inauthenticity that it's people are not sad. A lot of people are not sad that this guy is falling on his face.
It's really weird, and I don't know how to. I guess I should have thought about how I want to talk about this, but I do think that sometimes in the locker room, particularly a league that is 80% black, we know that in the NFL, quarterbacks are basically an extension of management in a lot of ways. They have an access to the front office and the owners that not a lot of other people do. They get the lion's share of the money. But they have a real balancing act. They've got to balance that management piece of the job with being one of the guys piece of the job, right? And with a black quarterback, that expectation is going to be even more different. It's going to be even more awkward, because people sort of know, hey, you're putting on a face for the public, but, you're supposed to be down here with us too, And I always just kind of wonder if Russell Wilson has really sort of struggled to maintain that in a way that makes everybody think that he's sort of fake. And there was a really interesting clip that was on the internet last week with Richard Sherman and Marshawn Lynch. And, Richard Sherman, like everybody, has a podcast now. And he said, I feel bad for him. You should reach out to him, to Marshawn. And Marshawn's like, yeah, man, I feel bad. I thought about reaching out to him, but I can't get a hold of him. We had to go through his manager. And he said it more colorfully than that. Okay. If you want to look it up, there's reasons why we can't play that clip on here, as I discovered this morning. But you should look it up because it's a much more colorful way of saying, but there's always been that sort of smoke around Russell Wilson. And so I think it's just, it's weird because most quarterbacks do not get denigrated and laughed at in public quite this way, especially somebody who's been great. Like Russell Wilson has been great for like a decade.
And great with Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, and great with Marshawn Lynch. And so it's been really uncomfortable to watch him go to a new place and just get not any of the benefit of the doubt that most of these great quarterbacks get. And I just wonder if it's because, hey, he had to straddle that management. One of the guys thinks, I don't know if I should tell it. Maybe I'll tell the story in the bonus about one time being in the Seahawks locker room with Russell Wilson there that sort of told me everything I needed to know about his standing in that locker room.
And Josh, before we move on to Brady and Rodgers, maybe the bottom line here is that Russell Wilson, because of the miles on his tires, is not the mobile quarterback that he was, combined with the fact that Nathaniel Hackett wants him to be a drop back quarterback, which might make sense for him at this point in his career if he's not as mobile as he used to be. But if he's not good at that, well, then you've got a big problem.
I do think that we just need to wait for him to be healthy and then see what it looks like after that. I'm sorry to preach a little bit of caution.
Why can't we also
takes.
wait till they fire their coach and hire somebody else too?
I mean, they're tied to this guy for many years and many hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So he'll definitely get the chance to redeem this bad early season.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Josh, is we should all just grab a beef mode by Marshawn Lynch and wait for Russell Wilson to come back.
Have it for lunch and for dinner. So yeah, I think you're right, Stefan, that that Brady is on the far end of the take continuum, and that we shouldn't base much of anything on him. And Rodgers is maybe somewhere in the middle. I mean, he's closer to Brady than to Wilson, I think, in terms of greatness and career accomplishment. But in terms of like the takeovers, he's only won one Super Bowl. So that puts him closer to Russell Wilson. And so if we put performance to the side, I think what's most interesting to me is kind of how we respond to the way these quarterbacks respond to their own poor play or their team's poor performance. There have been so many examples this year. There was the clip of Brady yelling at his offensive line and telling him you're like so much better than you're playing, and the linemen being quoted after the game being like, we love it when our boss Tom Brady talks about how bad we are. It's so motivating. And then every week it's Aaron Rodgers talking about how these receivers are so bad, and he doesn't literally say they're so bad, but he basically says these receivers are horrible. They're like all running the wrong routes. It's kind of probably true because they have just like a perverse need to surround him with the worst possible skill position talent.
It's interesting, by the way, just real quick. I used to follow Christian Watson's older brother in high school football, and you should follow that account to see the subs going on a little bit at Aaron Rodgers. I mean, everybody's not quite so excited to take that sort of public embarrassment in the way that he's been sort of dishing it out to people, right? So,
and the Brady thing, I mean, based on reporting we've seen, the like rift in his marriage was caused by him deciding to come back after telling Giselle he wasn't going to come back, and he comes back to like this shitty team.
But wait, we knew that it was going to be this bad, right? Like, I kind of don't.
Well, everybody was like going into the season like they seem to be losing all their offensive linemen, and now in the season it's like, wow, they have a bad offensive line. Go figure. Yeah. And with Rodgers going into the season, it was like, wow, they seem to have gotten rid of like Devontae Adams and all their good receivers. Wonder how that's going to work out. Well, looks like it's funny how in the NFL is out of all of the like major leagues that we follow, kind of the most unpredictable. I mean, you have the Giants and Jets with these like winning records and blah, 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 et cetera, and so forth. And yet it is funny how sometimes exactly what you think is going to happen is what happens. And like even a Rodgers and a Brady can't defy that gravity, Stefan.
But even with all that, do we expect this to happen to Tom Brady?
Yes.
And Aaron Rodgers? I mean,
yes.
I mean, is it schadenfreude that,
yes.
that it is happening? I mean, they lost to Carolina on Sunday. And, I read a wire service story of the recap of the game. Like every paragraph was hilarious. The Panthers lost 12 of 13 games playing with a third-string quarterback, interim head coach. Mike Evans drops a 64-yard wide-open pass. They're 3-4. Brady's never been under 500 after 8 games, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, they traded Christian McCaffrey, and they're tanking. So there is some joy in watching this happen, of course. I mean, not that I wish ill on Tom Brady or anybody.
Why wouldn't you?
I mean, and here's the thing. Every great quarterback we've seen in our life has pretty much ended this way, with the exception of John Elway and maybe Joe Montana, who had sort of a decent second act with the Chiefs. But it always looks embarrassing and sad. Like, I felt bad for Peyton Manning at the end of his career. And so it could just be that this is what it's going to be like. And we get you can choose to laugh or you can have a little empathy. And I'm just going to choose to laugh, actually.
Up next, Adam Silver talks about relegation. Hang Up and Listen is brought to you by Progressive. What's one thing you'd purchase with a little extra savings? A weighted blanket? Smart speaker? That new self-care trend you keep hearing about? Well, Progressive wants to make sure you're getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save more than $700 on average. And customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need the most, they're at their best. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need the most, they're at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations.
If your favorite NBA team is bad this year, like really bad, there's some hope at the end of the 82-game slog. The projected number 1 pick is 7'4" French phenom Victor Wembanyama, someone we've gushed over plenty on this show the past couple of weeks. Landing Wembanyama is the gold pot at the end of the rainbow, and at least several teams seem poised to take that path. Because the incentive to be terrible is so great this season, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and the league office are closely watching the bottom of the league standings. According to a recent ESPN.com report, Silver told Phoenix Suns employees that the league has considered a number of measures to prevent teams from tanking, including relegation to the G League. Stefan, relegation probably... just hearing that term excited you. But Silver later said that relegation would be too destabilizing to the league, but that the NBA would be thinking of ways to keep teams out of the Wembanyama sweepstakes. As someone who follows European soccer closely, do you think relegation is actually not a terrible idea for the NBA?
Let's be clear. So Silver, while talking and apologizing to Suns employees, said that relegation would mean demoting and promoting, as you said, to and from the G League, which would, quote, so disrupt our business model. And even if you took 2 teams up from the G League, they wouldn't be equipped to compete in the NBA, he said. Well, duh, the G League isn't the answer. The answer is within the NBA itself, Joel, and I'm going to ask Josh to recuse himself from commenting until Joel comments here. Longtime listeners may remember my NBA Pro Rel proposal from the December 15th, 2014 show. It was a topic at the time because the NBA was lopsided. The West was way stronger. West team owners were upset because it was harder to make the playoffs. Mark Cuban floated a plan to move Chicago, Detroit, Indiana, and Milwaukee to the west, and Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and New Orleans to the east. That obviously went nowhere. But that was dumb anyway, because as we've seen fortune shift, my clear and sensible plan was and is this. Expand to 32 teams, Seattle, Vegas. One NBA, Joel. Conferences divided into 2 divisions, initially based on the finish from the previous season. 16 teams in each division. Imbalanced schedule and shorter season, 45 games against teams in your own division, 3 times per season, 30 games against teams in the other division, home and away. The top 12 from the first division make the playoffs, plus 4 teams from the second division. The top 4 in the second division then move up to the first division next year. The bottom 4 in the first division move down. So no effect on sponsorships, attendance, national or local TV schedules. Everyone is still in the NBA. Everyone still has a shot to play for a championship at the end of the season, but 1/4 of teams move every season. The weaker teams then have something to play for. You do need to build in some sort of financial or draft incentive to moving up, but this serves the purpose of de-emphasizing tanking. It gets rid of the anachronistic division conference nonsense. We don't need the Atlantic Division with Toronto and a Northwest Division with Utah and Denver, and it gives fans something to root for and against.
Wow, that's a lot to digest there. But
it's a well thought through plan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because the issue here is that we don't want teams to subvert the competitive spirit of the league by trying to lose games for a guy like Wembanyama. So if Wembanyama comes into this system, who would be most likely to pick him?
I think one of the top 4 teams in the second division. You got to give the shitty team something to compete for. So it's not the team with the worst record.
But man, what are you going to do about those bad teams? Like, how do those bad teams get good?
Well, you can do a lot of things. You can then make the rest of the draft order, based on records. There's ways to incentivize getting better.
See, I guess the thing is that, and not that I think you've thought through this is really interesting. I hear what you're saying and I take it seriously. I just think
you don't need to take it seriously.
In sports, teams are going to be bad for all sorts of reasons, and it's just really hard to legislate out bad teams and bad management. I guess the thing is like you're trying to reduce the incentive for teams being bad, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think teams intentionally try to get bad, like maybe what the Spurs are doing right now. Like they realize that like that 9-10 spot, maybe not for them, and they decide to get bad. But I think for the most part, teams just end up bad, and it's hard to get out of that cycle. And I don't know that punishing them makes it better. We only notice like the egregious examples, like the hinky teams or, the teams in Oklahoma City right now where they're clearly like not trying to be that competitive. But I mean, for the most part, I just think it's hard to stop teams from being bad.
Yeah, but this I think is more makes a team reputationally bad. And as a fan base, you're like, I want to get out of the second division. I want to get up to the first division. It's what drives European soccer. I mean, that and the hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that you benefit from moving up to the Premier League. But I think that's something that's missing from sports. Like, feeling shitty about your franchise and wanting them to, tangibly, like that's noticeable. Like I'm in the second division. That sucks. We got to get out of there.
So I don't think it's a terrible idea. If you want to use that as a pull quote on your,
I'm going to
on your jacket, then that's, I will allow it. But I think that it has a branding problem, your imaginary new league, which is, it's not a first division and a second division, or maybe it is a first division and a second division, but just the idea that it's all still the NBA. Like, I think that would be a hard sell on owners and fans, that we're all one big happy family with, the Kings at the bottom of Division 2. And then, I think the thing that really rankles, and that Adam Silver, I think, is particularly trying to legislate against, is a situation where, let's talk about this season, for instance, with the play-in. What they really don't want is teams trying to get out of the play-in and like trying to get into the lottery. So the way that it works now is that there are 6 teams in each conference that are guaranteed a playoff spot, and then you have teams 7 through 10 who are in the play-in to try to get into the main playoffs, which I think we all agree is a really great shift that the NBA has made, makes the opening days of the postseason more exciting, more teams get potentially involved, makes it a little bit less secure for the top teams and makes them try more during the regular season. But if you have a team that's competing for that 10th spot where you could theoretically, if not practically, win a championship, if you're number 10 in the conference, you can throw your hat in there, and they're saying, oh, actually, would it be better for us if we lost these games and didn't even try to win a championship? So we could, have a slightly better chance to get Victor Wembanyama. Like, that's a bad scene. And so any structure, like yours, Stefan, if you've got 12 teams in the top division, you don't want a situation where
16.
You get an injury or something happens, and the best strategy is to lose on purpose, get into that bottom division, get the high draft pick, and immediately kind of bounce back up. You want to make sure teams are fighting like hell not to get relegated. But then it's like, oh, well, if they're real bad like punishments for getting relegated, then the owners won't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, these are complicated matters. I mean, and all of them revolving around revenue generation. I mean, the problem with the play-in game is that, we were talking about baseball's structure earlier, and I alluded to the NBA and playoff success. In best of 7 series in the NBA, the better team, the better regular season record advances like 80% of the time. The success rate of 7 and 8 seeds in the NBA playoffs is kind of like, 13 and 14 and 15 seeds in the NCAA basketball tournament. There's not a lot of incentive to being the 8th seed other than you get, a few extra, a couple of home games probably in the playoffs.
But also, I think that kind of more mechanistic way of thinking about things, the kind of championship or bust, rings or banners or bust mentality, Joel, is that it just erases basically if not the entire reason, but like an enormous reason why we follow the teams that we follow. We enjoy our teams making the playoffs and thinking that they have a chance and having a strong, a 46 win regular season when you're like happy more than half the time your team plays. And so it just kind of erasing that and having the mentality of like, if you're probably going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, why even try to win? That, I think, is even almost more destructive.
But that's where we are, right? I mean, you're suggesting that, like,
but we should be incentivizing teams to be like near the bottom of the playoff ladder. Like a lot of teams are like, we don't want to be on the, kind of mediocrity escalator where you're just like fighting to get to the bottom. But like, as consumers of the sport, we want more teams that are like struggling and trying desperately to be like those 46 win teams. That's what makes the competition better and more interesting.
Don't you think that's some of that is a change in media narrative over the years? And I don't want to give the media too much credit for how this has changed in recent years, but it's been basically, if you're not competing for a championship, then it's a failure now. It seems at least that much more to be the case than it used to be when I was growing up. Like, it used to be like, if you were the Portland, I mean, it was disappointing for the early 90s Trailblazers to not have won a championship. But if you were competitive for a good number of years, or you were those Utah Jazz teams that had Karl Malone and John Stockton, like, it wasn't necessarily considered a resolute failure if they didn't win a championship. Like, it was good and important to be a competitive team. And I just kind of feel like now it feels like we've kind of locked into a cycle where it's like, oh my God, if the Lakers don't do it, I mean, obviously the Lakers, their problems are a lot more than that. But like, let's just say if you're a team that keeps coming up short, and it feels like it's a lot more of a dire situation than it used to be. And I don't know what maybe the change for that is. Like, I have a friend that says that the 73-9 Warriors really changed like the importance of the regular season for everybody in the NBA, that people saw that, oh, well, it doesn't really matter if the way that we treated that team for not winning the championship, that it sort of made everybody recalculate and be like, well, wait, what are we putting all of our effort into winning the regular season and having a great regular season? Because if we don't win a championship, then it's going to be seen as a failure anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's probably something to that. And I think, Stefan, maybe we can end by talking about the Lakers and the Utah Jazz as case studies. So the Lakers are 0-3 and have looked really gross while being 0-3, just shooting an absolutely abysmal, 20, low 20s percentage from three, just looking completely discombobulated, Russell Westbrook being terrible, everybody asking about Russell Westbrook being terrible, and like LeBron already being sick of answering the questions. And so
3 games into the season.
And so, yeah, like,
don't you think that was a little bit of acting? We could talk about that later, but I feel like that's like, I'm going to make this a deal so that everybody knows it's a deal anyway. So.
I agree with you, Joel. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, like in this universe, we can think about what this means for the Lakers. We can think about what it would mean for the Lakers and the NBA, a universe in which the Lakers being terrible would mean them getting bumped down, and whether anyone would ever consent to that. And then the Utah Jazz, they got rid of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert for a huge pile of draft picks after, as Joel has noted, a consistent run of success, best regular season team in the West, I think a couple years ago, never had the playoff success. We're going to blow it up. And now the plan was, we're going to get this pile of draft picks. We're going to sell off all of our vets. And then we're going to be at the top of the heap for the Wembanyama sweepstakes. Now they're 3-0. They have this really like frisky team of castoffs. I watched a lot of the game against the Pelicans. I mean, they're a tough team to play against and defend. Like, they got a lot of guys who can shoot. They got a lot of guys who are trying extremely hard, which goes a long way in the regular season. And Stefan, the commentary about it is like, wow, Danny Ainge, his like plan isn't really, working out here. Like they're going to get rid of Mike Conley. They're probably going to get rid of Jordan Clarkson, all these guys. Like if the ceiling of this Jazz team that's had a frisky start is like, yeah, maybe they could be 500. It's not going to last. Like, that's obviously not great for the long-term future of the franchise. And so we've got to tear it down. Like, that seems bad.
It does seem bad, especially if, we're looking pretty good. We've stockpiled draft picks already. There's a tremendous amount of value in the mid to late first round and even in the second round of the NBA draft. We could be really good again.
No, I mean, compared to the top,
I know,
3 to 5, like it's.
I know there's a drop off.
Yeah. Huge, like a Marianas Trench drop off.
But you stockpile, you get somebody that turns out to be really good. And, one of those, your Manu Ginobili's, say, Joel, that you get value for later in the first round. And then this is the NBA way. Then you supplement that with, we've got a shit ton of cap room and we can go out and sign someone at the right moment. And I imagine that's the thinking here. But you're right. Like, the problem for teams that are forecasting this is that the guys that are on those teams, they want to do well so that they can stay in the NBA. They don't want to roll over so that you can get, a top 5 pick and then cut me.
It'll be really interesting, Joel. I mean, the Utah thing will probably not be sustainable, but it would be really interesting what Adam Silver would have to say, or what he would do if, like, the Jazz go, they start out 14-6 and then just start selling off players. Like, that's not something that, like, anybody had anticipated.
No, it's not. I just want to circle back for a second because, Stefan did it and I got to mention it. So you would tank for a 2-time All-Star. So you would tank for Jeff Ruland or, Terry Porter. Jim Paxson, somebody like that, Norm Nixon. Imagine tanking for a two-time All-Star along the lines of Manu Ginobili. Rashard Lewis, two-time All-Star. Would a team tank for him? I don't know. Maybe.
It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Other credit cards often charge annual fees for access to perks you might not even use, or that can come with restrictions. Apple Card gives you valuable benefits without annual fees. In fact, there's not a single fee at all. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start using it right away. Subject to credit approval. Variable APRs range from 13.99% to 24.99% based on credit worthiness. Rates as of October 1st, 2022.
And now it is time for Afterballs, sponsored by Bennett's Prune Juice, endorsed by Kenny Sailors, who says it was okay. ESPN's Sam Borden last week sought to commemorate an important NFL anniversary, 20 years since the last barefooted kick, an extra point by Jeff Wilkins of the St. Louis Rams. But Borden's story took a shock turn when Wilkins told him that he doesn't deserve to be mentioned alongside the barefooted kicking legends of the 80s and 90s, Rich Karlis, Mike Lansford, Tony Franklin, because while his toes were wiggling freely back in 2002, his foot was heavily taped, so he wasn't barefoot at all. Wilkins had doffed his right boot before that season because his mechanics were off. He told Borden that it felt like the cleats on his kicking shoe were skimming the grass. But Wilkins didn't like the feel of skin on ball, so he taped his foot heavily, so much that he says it was as thick as the leather of a shoe. Wilkins made 9 of 12 field goals, all 16 of his extra points. After making an extra point against Seattle in Week 7, he decided that he had fixed his problem, and he put his shoe back on. So while Wikipedia and news stories cite Wilkins as the last barefooted kicker, Borden concludes that history should defer to Wilkins himself. If he doesn't believe he was barefooted, then he wasn't barefooted. That would push the last barefooted kick back more than a decade to Lansford on New Year's Eve in 1990. I could go either way on this, but I admire Jeff Wilkins for shedding his burden. And yes, I did try kicking barefoot without tape. My kicking coach made me do it. It hurt like hell, but it did help me focus on finding the right contact point on my foot. Also, my fantasy football team is nicknamed Barefooted Kickers without the article, like Bare Naked Ladies, the band. Barefooted Kickers. Josh, what's your barefooted kicker?
I think I've talked about this on the show before, but since Stefan is reheating his 2014 relegation idea, I'm just going to go for it. And in fairness to me, I don't remember when or in what context I talked about it. So enjoy. This is a recipe for sports happiness that I've thought a lot about. And I'm going to start zoomed way out by saying that it's possible to divide up all realms of human experience, not just sports experience, into 4 different boxes or categories. So if we have one axis that's expectations and another axis that's results, you can then subdivide the expectation side into high expectations, low expectations, and subdivide the results side into victories and defeats or triumphs and failures or however you want to label it. So that gives us our 4 boxes. You can have a triumph when you have high expectations. You can have a failure when you have high expectations, or you can have a triumph with low expectations or a failure with low expectations. So let's say you're having a meeting with your terrible boss and it goes poorly, then that's a failure when you expect one, failure with low expectations. You have a meeting with your terrible boss and it goes great, that's a triumph with low expectations. Your terrible boss doesn't show up for the meeting, that's a triumph with low expectations. but then you're so excited that your terrible boss didn't show up, you spill coffee on your keyboard. That is a failure when you have high expectations. You get the idea. But I think the key breakdown here, it's not actually between triumph and failure or between high and low expectations. It's between matched results and expectations and mismatched results and expectations. Losing when you think you're going to lose, winning when you think you're going to win, they have a lot in common emotionally. No surprises, everything is status quo. Winning when you think you're going to lose and losing when you think you're going to win are way more emotionally fraught and volatile situations. You expect one thing and you get sucker punched emotionally. Sometimes it's a happy sucker punch. Often when it comes to sports, it's more like a Jordan Poole getting sucker punched. It's a bad sort of feeling. We can talk about examples in a second, but the point that I'm circling around to is that the secret to sports happiness is in how we respond to those two unexpected outcomes. And so I'm going to use Joel. You're going to be our example here. To make fandom worth it, we need to be maximally happy with unexpected victory. And I feel like with TCU's early season triumphs, I maybe want you to be a little bit happier.
Why?
Because there's this sense going into the season, you were kind of more than iffy on the coach. TCU had you beaten down. TCU had you beaten down the last few years. They were on the treadmill of, I think I said escalator of mediocrity before. It's actually the treadmill of mediocrity. They were on the treadmill of mediocrity. They'd had the outlier seasons under Coach Gary Patterson, but now it seemed like they were just settling back into an SMU-like existence. And nobody is happy. Nobody is happy with that. And then this year they're undefeated. They're number 7. If they win the conference and go undefeated, they'll be in the playoff probably. Wow. And so
if they go undefeated,
it feels like you're not ready to emotionally kind of let go and fully embrace that this is happening.
So TCU's last 3 wins have come over teams whose quarterbacks did not finish the game. So let's maybe I will adjust expectations if they play against a decent team with a starting quarterback that lasts all 4 quarters. If they can win one of those games, then maybe, you'll see me with the appropriate amount of excitement. But also, let's just keep in mind, I mean, this is the Sonny Dykes MO. Start out really, really fast, have a 7-0, 8-0 start, and finish 9-3, or 8-4. So
this is just what I'm talking about, Stefan. Joel is you're being a great subject for our study here. What is the point? What is the point of sports if you can't be happy when your team wins, especially if the wins are unexpected?
Why do you need to protect yourself? I mean, are you protecting yourself against disappointment, or are you reveling like certain baseball fan bases did for many decades in their own mediocrity? And then once they succeeded, it was like, oh, we have been doing this all along. Well, they found that success wasn't something to be afraid of, but to embrace.
I am happy in the moment when we win games, but I'm also keeping the proper context. I know that if you fall behind 18 points against Kansas State without its starting quarterback, that you're probably not a good team. Not a great team.
But if you come back and score 38 points and win, maybe you are.
They are literally overrated. I think that they're a good team, but the expectation of being at number 7 is they're out ahead of their skis a little bit. And
this is a man who's been hurt before and doesn't want to get hurt again. We all understand that.
I just think I'm being realistic about what's going on here, and I think everybody else is going to see it eventually as well.
Sports fandom defined by just rationalism and realism. That's the characteristic of that we all define ourselves by. And so, let's wrap up with the second category. I generally, and Joel is a good object lesson when this isn't the case, I generally think it's easier to be happy with unexpected victory than it is to manage your emotions when you've convinced yourself that victory is assured and the rug gets pulled out from under you. Like when I was trying to think of an example, the thing that among my teams, the defeat that's been hardest for people to get over in the last few years is the Saints losing to the Rams in the NFC Championship game with that pass interference call.
Oh, man.
And the thing that I think is really hard, but is so important to maintaining a lifelong relationship with sports, Stefan, we can go to you here, is being extremely happy and understanding and realizing how important sports are when your team wins, and when your team loses, realizing how frivolous and pointless sports are and that they have no effect on the real world and in our lives. So there's some truth to that, which I think makes it like a dream that is potentially achievable if you have the right mindset. But I think there is something just extraordinarily fake about it as well. That like
performative, you mean?
Is it? I guess. The final question for both of you is it possible to like truly believe in your soul that the wins matter and the losses don't?
I would argue that you shouldn't convince yourself that the losses don't matter. That the whole point of this entire exercise of being a fan is to feel. And sometimes you feel the good and sometimes you feel the bad. And if you can rationally embrace both, not by minimizing its importance, but by maximizing it, by being willing to revel and to suffer at the appropriate time. So, Joel, you should be reveling, and you can suffer in 2 weeks when they lose to whoever they're going to lose to.
But Joel, I'd like you to respond to this, and then we'll give you the last word. I think everything you're saying is true, but where I would push back is, yes, the losses matter and the wins matter, but we could say that maybe it would be healthier and achievable for the losses to sting and really matter in the moment. Just like Joel was saying that he's able to revel in the wins in the moment. Is it possible, Joel, to revel in the wins in the moment and also allow that feeling of happiness to carry you through the week or whatever, but with the losses, just be mad for like, have it end when the game ends and then just like go through your week like nothing happened?
Well, it's tough. I think I've told this story here before when the Rockets defeated the Knicks in the NBA Finals in 1994. And thanks again, New York fans. You guys have been really great to me. Really appreciate it. When I'm driving from my father's home back to my mother's home, this is across town, 30-minute drive, and the Rockets had won. And I'm just in the car, and it just occurred to me as I'm driving home, I was like, oh man, I didn't win anything today. Like I'm not getting a championship ring. And it was actually really it was not depressing.
But that was before social media, and you didn't win the chance to troll Knicks fans.
So there you go. That's it. So I found that I just really enjoy talking shit about other people's teams when they lose, almost as much as when my team wins. And so, if TCU beats Texas, for instance, that'll be delightful. I will have a great time, and I will enjoy talking so much shit on Twitter. But, I'm holding my cards close to the vest. If hey, look, when we won the Rose Bowl in 2010, and I still think the TCU should be considered the national champion from that year because they were undefeated, untied, and won the Rose Bowl in the year undefeated. And you could say whatever how Auburn acquired Cam Newton that season. So maybe some people might want to think about it. Since cheating is such a big deal to sports fans, like maybe you might want to jump on the train and consider TCU the national champion that year. So you guys are not going to be able to psychoanalyze me on this. Like, this is fixed. This is how I've chosen to enjoy sports, or not enjoy it, as it were.
Your 50-minute hour is up, Joel. That is our show for today. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. Listen to past shows and subscribe or just reach out. Go to slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show and to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. For Joel Anderson and Stefan Fatsis, I'm Josh Levin. Remember Zalmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.